Yeah, there's a lot of challenges I think that the community faces. Right, there are gaps in technologies and tools, in digital accessibility in general, like many well documented and known accessibility issues. With websites and apps and things like that, and also with the current tools that are available. But there are so many hurdles that I think the community faces on the employment front, and some of those things are with the technologies, but often they're really with the way the experience is kind of set up. I think everything from like an interviewing standpoint, to kind of requesting accommodations, that interview experience. There's so many barriers along the way that make it hard for someone who has skills, potential, drive, but they have certain challenges, and it really provides a challenge to kind of get through that experience.
Right.
It makes a job market right now that's very hard, even that much more challenging. It's
Right.
hard for everyone.
A lot of people don't even realize that some of these things could be a hurdle for people within the blind and low vision community, right? Like you take
Mhm,
so much of it for granted.
mhm,
The fact that a website is not accessible is a problem that we within the blind and low vision
mhm.
community face a lot
On a regular daily
on a
basis, yeah,
regular
yeah.
basis, and we have our own set of sort of unique challenges,
Mhm.
and so along the way there are constant kind of barriers.
I think on the employment front, there still is quite an uphill battle. You'll hear a lot of statistics kind of thrown out there, and often when you hear something around 70% unemployment for the blind low vision community, that number may fluctuate year over year, but oftentimes it remains very high. Just in general, compared to sighted peers, right? So on one hand, I mean the challenges are still very much there, but I do think the technology is shifting. I think it's helping, and I think also employers are starting to understand the benefits of hiring people that bring in different perspectives and different backgrounds. We obviously went through this kind of DEI phase, which is in some ways sometimes very kind of controversial, and there's mixed
Mhm.
feelings about it, right? But I think the general sentiment is good to like push for more inclusion, more diversity, as long as it's being done for the right reasons, right?
Right.
Not just to like check a box on some form that's
Right.
out there or to get some funding line, but
Right.
in a real honest way to diversify things. And I think right now we're also seeing that along the lines of neurodiversity as well, like
Mhm.
really folding that in, like not
Mhm.
just thinking about blindness and hearing loss, mobility considerations, but also on the neurodiversity front, and that just because someone thinks differently or has maybe a different kind of like brain chemistry, right?
Yeah.
That can actually be a very positive thing that
Yep.
can bring a different perspective.
Yep.
And I think blindness is kind of similar, that it does open up perspectives on tools. And I think that's something that has shifted, is that companies are looking a lot more closely at the tools that they're either building or onboarding,
Right.
to make sure that they are accessible and therefore also usable by the majority of their workforce.
Right.
And so I think we're seeing that push.
Right.
The challenge in the space, right, is a lot of the push is of course through litigation and things like that. It's still
Right.
very much that kind of carrot and stick approach.
Yeah.
But that sometimes does get things at least moving. But yeah, I think I am seeing a lot more shift, and employers being more willing to accommodate things and
Right.
make the process a little bit easier for people to have more of a fair chance.
Right.
Um,
I think overall, you know, even like spending time with so many people from our community, no one wants a handoff.
yes.
Everyone wants to feel like they've earned the right to keep the job that has
Yes.
been offered to them.
Hmm.
And I think that is the right angle to approach it, which is how do we help you achieve your maximum potential,
Hmm.
because you may have a certain disability, but as long as your cognitive functions are enabling you to do the job,
Hmm.
if we can provide tools and technologies
Hmm.
and training
Hmm.
in order for you to be able to actually achieve those things, I think that is the win-win for both members of the community as well as society in general, is
Hmm.
because then these members can be an active part of society, actually
Hmm.
moving things forward, rather than sometimes like feeling like they just want to be given some subsidies or
Mhm.
something like that, which uh, is not the general case as I see it.
Very
What is
much so.
your experience?
Yeah.
And Lighthouse employs does so many initiatives. You work
Mhm.
with the vocational
Mhm.
rehab. You also have factories where you
Mhm.
employ people from within the community. What are you seeing are internal things from organizations like Lighthouse
Mhm.
that are working, or even with some other organizations without really naming them if we don't have to,
Sure.
in terms of what's not working?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, along those lines, what you were saying, I think, when someone has the motivation to do the job and they also have the skill sets, but they just need to do it in a different way, that should be totally fine. Like employers
Yeah.
should be seeing that as, wow, this person is motivated. And oftentimes, what I see with people in the space is that they're often even more motivated than their
Right.
peers. They have to work even harder,
Right.
to get those opportunities,
Right.
to keep those opportunities,
Right.
and they're really willing to do oftentimes whatever it takes. But they just need the employers to kind of hold up the other end of the bargain and say, hey, we'll accommodate you, we'll get you the tools you need, we'll
Right.
make those accommodations. and
Right.
and oftentimes they point at cost, but in the long run, it's, you could view it as an investment, but it's a investment worth making, in someone that's
Right.
motivated, and will do great things for your company.
Right.
But yeah, there are a lot of different pathways, as you mentioned. I think people are definitely not looking for handouts, but they are looking for support, for programs that can help them, find the right resources, the right entry points, and things like the Department of Rehabilitations. Within California, we work with DOR. And there are similar agencies, across the U.S. in different states.
Right.
And DOR is really focused on employment and also education
Hmm.
as two of the primary pathways. And through that process, by getting a counselor, opening a case, you can get access to different resources that can help you find job opportunities, get placement. They can help you get technology as well.
Right.
But it's definitely not an easy process. It's not a handout. You
Right.
have to fill out a lot of paperwork. You have to really go through the steps. And there are challenges with that. I think navigating that DOR landscape
Right.
can be challenging.
Right.
And that is something we do try to support with, at Lighthouse when community members do reach out for support.
Right.
We try to make sure that they're plugged into DOR, that they understand that landscape, what are the options available.
Right.
Um,
Because it does feel it's like if you have a vision disability, and in order to get aids, you have to fill a lot of paperwork. It's almost counterintuitive
it
to the
it is,
problem.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
and
know
a
if it
lot of it's not
helps. And I'm
accessible, and
sure there's
yeah.
there's logical reasons to it, but I'm sure there's a lot of uh, steps that can be simplified heavily
Mhm.
in order to make those accommodations. And I think a lot of it also has to stem from the fact that if we can help explain the benefits better,
Mhm.
whether it is to the employers or if it is to DOR, maybe in some other ways,
Mhm.
hopefully then the process becomes easier for them to get the aids to actually show the productivity uptake to make the whole thing worth it.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And this isn't a knock on DOR, but it's definitely something I've seen in the space where sometimes I think there's this pressure to like close a case or just help someone find a job, like any job, just to like kind of satisfy that requirement. And it is helping them, right? But it's not always like a career opportunity, or it's not always like something that
Right.
might be more of a long-term thing with an investment, right? So it is important to have those technology tools available and the pathways, but also like training on how to use assistive technology,
Right.
right? How can you be effective in your job? And
Right.
and so much of that comes down to sitting down with the individual and understanding what are really their goals, like what are they really trying to achieve,
Right.
and oftentimes they might be aiming for something big, but they don't know how to get there, right?
Right.
And DOR can help. It's very good about laying out what are those steps and what are those options. Should you go back to school? Should you
Right.
start in a more entry level role?
Right.
Are there ways to kind of move up, and what are
Right.
those options? And so, for us at Lighthouse, we have used we do have a manufacturing facility where we do make sustainable chemical cleaning products and tissue packets, and a lot of those contracts are through the government, and we do see that as an entry level point for blind and low vision individuals to kind of gain that work experience, learn how to work on a team, learn the job responsibilities, those transferable skills. But unless someone really wants that as their career, we don't want to feel like people are stuck, on an assembly line, right? It's
Yeah.
really just that foundational skills
Yeah.
that can then transfer to something else.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think people in the community need that step. Like, what is that first step? Because
Right.
for myself as well, and I don't know about your experiences, but as a low vision individual, finding that first opportunity in the workforce was very intimidating and kind
Right.
of scary. Like,
Right.
just in general, even like for an internship,
Right.
it was like, what is the right environment? What is the right hiring manager? Are they going to take a chance on me?
Right.
What are they going to place like kind of biases or limitations on
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
That's a scary thing to do, to take
Yeah.
that first step into
Yeah.
employment.